I just love that video for so many reasons, right? It really shows like the hard work that goes into being a mom. And then on the other end, it shows just how big this job is, right? It shows the mundane things, the hard things, the sacrifice, and then on the other end, when the interviewees see who the associates are and what the job is, they see the significance of the job. They see the impact of the job of motherhood, and all that kind of just goes by the wayside, right? But I mean, the candidates, they used terms like this. They said, it's inhumane. This job would be inhumane. One woman said, who would do that, right? This is cruel, who would do that? I think the one lady asked, is this legal, right? Is this even legal to do this amount of work, right? So you get these two opposite polar views of motherhood. And unfortunately in our culture today, a lot of people tend to camp out in that first section. They focus on the mundane tasks and the extreme sacrifice that mother requires. And it gets a little negative connotation. Motherhood is not revered as highly nowadays as it was in previous generations. And I actually fell into this way of thinking when I was a mom early on. My son was less than a year old, and I went to a dinner with my husband and some colleagues for work, and it was husbands and wives. And so the husband started chatting, and the wife started chatting, and these couples, to my knowledge, did not have any children yet. And of course, the wives, they asked me, so what do you do? And I had quit a lucrative career to stay home with my child. I was working part-time from home at the time. But without even thinking, I responded, oh, I'm just a mom. And I was like, right? I'm like, wait, no. I felt embarrassed. I felt less than, because these women had like big careers, you know? And I just felt like being a mom at that time was kind of a bottom feeder job. It was not using my full potential, as they tell you. But I was wrong, as you can imagine, and as that video portrayed. Motherhood is so much more than just a mom, and today we're going to be looking at and how we can embrace this role and the privilege that it truly, truly is. But we need to start with, where did motherhood come from? Is it a social construct? Did we come up with it as a society because it was a need? Was it a product of evolution, right? Did it just emerge from the muck? I think when you really think about motherhood and you see the significance of it and the importance of it, it's really hard to subscribe to that kind of thinking. The Bible says in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And this means that God created the expanse of space that we see, every planet, every solar system, and he created this earth that we live on that is perfectly suited for our survival. And then if you read the creation account in the book of Genesis, it goes on for 6 days. And on day 6, God creates human beings. He creates men and women. In Genesis 1:27-28 says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Well, the Bible tells us that not only is God the creator of the heavens and the earth, but he's also the creator of us, human beings. He created men and women. And I notice that as soon as he creates them, he immediately gives them a command, right? He doesn't say, hey, go build a house, go tend to the garden. His first command to man and woman is be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. He's telling them, go have kids, go have lots and lots of kids. And so we see that this is where motherhood begins, because if you read on in Genesis, you see that Eve does do that. Adam and Eve have lots and lots of kids, and we see this role of motherhood emerge in the beginning. So point number 1 is realize that God made you a mom. Realize God made you a mom. Well, when we realize that the God of the universe created us and created this role for us, it starts to hold a little more weight, does it not? Because when we say God is creator, it's not just stating a fact. It's not like saying Ben & Jerry's makes ice cream, okay? That's a fact. But saying God is my creator holds more weight because it has an effect on us. It begs the question, what does that mean for me? It means that if God created you, he has authority over you. Any creator has authority over their creation. And having authority means you make the rules. He makes the rules. He calls the shots. He's the big boss. And having someone over authority means that you are accountable to that authority. So we are accountable to God as our creator. And some might not like the sound of that. Not a lot of people do, right? We don't want to be told what to do. We don't want to be told how to mother our children. I mean, really, what does God know? Well, he knows a lot. As our creator, he knows us better than we know ourselves. He knows our children better than we know our children. So God should be someone we run to, not run from, because he knows not only what is good for our children, he knows what is best for our children because he created them. We should know that the children that you have, God gave specifically to you. He chose you as their mother. There's not just some like embryo factory up there, right, where they just kind of get tossed out. Your children were given specifically to you. Their genders, their age spread, how far apart they are, their personalities, their physical attributes. They were given for you to be their mother. That's why they don't belong to your neighbors or your sister or your brothers. They belong to you. They're your children. And I think we can agree that moms bring so much to the table for the well-being and the development of children. And we can all agree that we are physically built for it, right? We can grow that child for 9 months. We can birth the child with our bodies. We can feed the child with our bodies, which we could go on for probably days to talk about just the miraculous design that takes. But even beyond pregnancy and postpartum, we can see that mothers bring so much to the table for their children because of the way that we're designed. Moms bring a nurturing effect for kids. We are just typically more nurturing than our counterparts, than men, right? I'm a mom of 3 boys, and I can tell you that if you were to give one of my boys when they were younger a doll, it would probably end up being like thrown down the stairs or thrown over the balcony. I mean, it'd be done in a day, put it that way. But you give a little girl a doll, and more often than not, she holds it, she caresses it, she nurtures it. It's just, we are just more nurturing. And this gives the sense of security and safety for children that they so desperately need. Well, we also exhibit more empathy and sensitivity. We tend to feel more for other people. We tend to tune into other people's emotions more. And we can pass this on to our children. Whether they're boys or girls, they need to learn empathy and sympathy for others. I mean, you can just see it demonstrated if you go to the park on a Saturday morning and the dads are there too, and like little Junior falls and scrapes his knee. If you're a betting woman, who's he running to, right? He's running to mom, right? Because mom's going to say, oh, I know it hurts. I know how that hurts. And she's going to just have that natural empathy that the child needs at that time. We're well equipped to help our children regulate emotions. Because we're emotional, right? Women tend to be a little more emotional than men, okay? We can admit it. But as we grow and we learn, we have to learn to control our emotions. We have to learn when emotions are okay and when they're not okay, when they're appropriate and inappropriate. And we can help our children do that as well because we have ample experience with it, wouldn't you say? And lastly, we tend to be more cautious. Right? Going back to the playground, if Junior's up there and he's 10 feet above the ground and about to jump off the balcony, mom's kind of like, no. And dad's like, go for it. And truly both are needed. Children need to know when something is truly unsafe, right? And they can learn that from their moms. But at the same time, they need to know when something is a risk worth taking, right? Well, when God created motherhood, he had a really good and important purpose for it. And unlike our culture, we shouldn't see it as something that does not use our full potential, but we should see it as a privilege because it's been given to us by God. And remembering that motherhood is a privilege when we hit the hardships of motherhood is going to make all the difference just by changing the way that we can think about them, changing the way that we think about motherhood as a whole, as a privilege. And someone shared this with me years ago, and I've always just kind of hidden it away and I find it so useful. She said, when you find yourself tempted to grumble about being a mom or thinking less of whatever it is you're doing to help care for or raise your children, instead of saying, I have to, say, I get to. Because if we truly see motherhood as a privilege, it's something we get to do. If you give your children privileges, if you give them screen time, if you say you're going to take them to Disneyland, they get to go to Disneyland. They get to have screen time. They don't have to. So it's important that we look at motherhood and the things that we do day in and day out and say, I get to do this because this is such a privilege. So I'll just give you an example. I have to make my kids lunch, and I haven't even cleaned up breakfast yet, right? You could say that. Or you could say something like this: I get to make my kids lunch because they're healthy and they're growing. And what a privilege it is to be able to help them in this way. Now, you don't have to say things like this out loud. You might kind of sound a little weird if someone's listening in, but say it in your head. I mean, this is just a mindset that we should have among us as we mother our children. Well, if you truly see motherhood as the high calling it is and the privilege it is to do all the things that are needed, and we have this mindset, it's going to change the way that you mother your children. And we know that motherhood is difficult. There are difficulties that arise. And it's so tempting when you're in a difficult phase to fast forward and say, well, when my kids get this old, it'll be easier. Or when they can do this or that, it will get easier. As a mother of an almost 18-year-old, I'm going to share some wisdom. When you're in a phase of motherhood, there's let's say there's 10 challenges you're facing, and you see them walking out the door, and you're like, oh, yes. Well, guess what? 10 more are walking in for the next phase, okay? There's just a different set of challenges for every stage of childhood, and we just have to be prepared for them. And if we see motherhood as the privilege it is, it's going to help us with that mindset. We remember that our job is from God. It's going to help with that mindset. It reminds me of when I worked in a corporate world. There were 3 floors to our building, and the 3rd floor was the executive level. And it was where the guys that ran the company worked, and it was clean. It smelled nice up there. It was really quiet. I worked on the 2nd floor, and occasionally my boss would come in and say, hey, we got to work on this today. It just came down from the 3rd floor. And it was some kind of project, some kind of report, something. But whatever my plans had been for that day, I had to kind of push them down the line of priority. Because this came from the 3rd floor, and it was important, and it was going to be reviewed. And so I had to do my best work to get it done, and I had to put other things below it. And it's the same with motherhood. Sometimes we've got to move other things down the priority ladder, and mothering our children must move up. So point number 2 is prioritize being a mom. Prioritize being a mom. Well, while we're talking about the high calling of motherhood today, I should note that motherhood is not the highest calling for women. And you may have heard that. You may have heard people say motherhood is the highest calling for a woman. And it sounds good, and it sounds true, but it's not. If you're married here in the room, your relationship with your husband takes precedence over your relationship with your children. If you're a Christian in the room here today, your relationship with God and obeying and honoring Him takes precedence over the other 2 sets of relationships. So if we see that hierarchy and we look at where children rank, they're 3rd in line. But that does not make it possible that we can take that role lightly or even do it halfway. We're still called by God to do it. Prioritizing being a mom simply means putting the needs of your kids before your own. It means putting their well-being before your own. It's being intentional with our time. It's taking extra time and being intentional about it to pour into them, to teach them, to train them, to discipline them. This is so important that we have to sometimes push other things down the ladder. And one of those things that's become kind of a popular mantra in mom culture is me time. We love me time, right? Me time is defined as any time away from your children, away from maybe your family as a whole. And it's just your time to maybe go to Target by yourself, go get a cup of coffee with a friend, go to the gym. And you're probably thinking, well, what's wrong with that? I can't do that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you have the right motives. And so me time can become an idol when our motives are not right. First of all, if we become entitled to me time, then it becomes like, hey, if I don't get my me time, then, I better get my me time or else, right? And it seeds this sense of resentment we can feel towards our kids and our husband and our family as a whole, and we don't want to be in that dangerous territory. The motivation for me time should be to get away, to rest, and to reset so that you can come back and be a good mom. It should not be to escape. We should not be like running out the door, our purse flying behind us, to go to Target. We should go with the mindset of, I'm going to go and have this time where no one is asking anything of me, and I'm just going to use it to rest and reset so I can be a good mom when I come back. That needs to be our motivation. And I can say again, as a mom, where I'm looking at, I have 9 years left until I probably will have a lot more me time. And in my head, I feel like I've built it up to be a lot more glamorous than it is, because as it approaches, you're like, wait, slow down. I don't need that me time. So take this time to just really enjoy your kids. Use any break you get. Be grateful for it, to go back and be a good mom. On a second note, one of the distractions we can have, something that can take away time from our kids, that we can make a priority over our kids, believe it or not, is that silly device that we carry in our pockets. The necessary evil of the cell phone, right? I meant to bring it up here. For cell phones, we can all be guilty, I think, of sitting there and scrolling, answering an email, answering a text, and kind of, pushing our children aside. But we cannot mother from a digital device, Even if we think we're being intentional by, capturing all the pictures and posting them on social media, we have to ask ourselves, are we really present when we're doing that? We cannot mother from a digital device. It's just not the way God intended. I had a friend that she had a rule in her house. At 5 p.m., they had a basket, and all the family's cell phones went in the basket for the rest of the night until the next morning. And I just love that because they dedicated those evenings to family time. They would have a family dinner. They would just really pour into each other. She would prioritize that time. She would prioritize her children, and she got rid of the distraction that she knew, had it just been sitting there, not in a basket, not out of reach, would be a distraction. And I just kept thinking, what a great way to focus and prioritize motherhood in our age of technology. I mean, we're in it. It's not going away. So we're going to have to really take steps to combat the temptations that it brings. Well, contrary to what people believe, motherhood is more than just keeping the kids alive. Have you ever heard anyone say that? Like, just keeping them alive, And I have boys, so there are days where I'm just like, did I just keep them alive today? I don't know. But, that's feeding and clothing and bathing them. I mean, it's nonstop, right? But to be honest, anyone could keep your kids alive. Anyone could feed your kids. Anyone could clothe your kids. Anyone could take them to their baseball practice. But what moms need to do is to really be intentional about guiding them, teaching them, directing them, encouraging them, disciplining them. That's where the real work comes in. And it's going to take just prioritization. It's going to take intentionality with our time. Another wise person I know a lot of wise people, once told me that when your child is an infant, look at your child and envision them 18 years from now, who you would want them to be, and start working on it today. And I thought that was such wise advice, because we can get so caught up in the day-to-day. Days go by, weeks go by, months go by, years go by, and you realize, wait, what am I doing, right? So if we're going to prioritize being a mom, we need to set goals for our children's growth, especially in something like character development. You may have heard the phrase, more is caught than taught. I'm sure you've heard that before, meaning that your kids are watching you and they catch the way that you act, and they're going to act the way that you act. And I'm sure you've witnessed this so far, even if you have a toddler, right? They'll say something in a tone that you've said it, and you're like, whoa, They're like little mirrors. And it's true. They catch so much from us, and we need to be living lives of upstanding standards in front of them. Like, for instance, if you want your child to be a truth teller, you don't want them lying, then you can't lie yourself. That would mean even something like, okay, I'm going to pull the kids out of school and go to Disneyland tomorrow. Oh, but I got to call them out on the hotline. Oh, Hunter and Sawyer can't come in today because they're sick. Ooh. Even if your children's 10 rooms away in your house, they're going to hear it. I'm telling you right now. And it's like it goes into this little memory bank of theirs, and they are hypocrisy detectives, okay? They are listening and they're watching. So we do need to be living lives in front of them that we want them to mirror. But as a mom of boys, of 3 boys, like I said, I have demonstrated a lot in my life, and some things have been caught. And I'll be honest, some things haven't been caught. I'll give you an example. I'm an avid reader. I love to read. I read to my kids in utero. I read to them when they were babies and toddlers and all up into grade school grades. They see me reading all the time. I have modeled it like crazy. And yet I am 0 for 3 of avid readers in my home. I know, and it breaks my heart. I hear you. Yes, it breaks my heart because books are so great, right? My husband and I are hard workers. My husband runs a business, and he works so hard. He models hard work. I believe I model hard work. I am rarely idle. One child caught it, and he is a hard worker. I have another who just does the bare minimum. He likes to just what is the least amount of work I can do, and then get credit for doing it, right? And so I could say, I've modeled this behavior in our home, and they didn't catch on. I did my job. It is what it is. Or I can be intentional, and I can put the work in to teach these things and the importance of these things. And that's what's required. That is what is required. I had to work hard at finding books that my children would read. I have boys, they like nonfiction. They like things about war. We've read a lot of war books. I know everything about every war at this point. Titanic was another topic. I know I am a Titanic historian, okay? So I had to find things that interested them to get them to read. I couldn't just give up on that. My child who likes to do the bare minimum, he has chores, and if he does a chore at the bare minimum level, we make him go back and do it again until it is done to the standard that we expect. Right now, he started his own business of washing garbage cans with a pressure washer, and it's a dirty, disgusting job, but he's doing it, okay? And he's working hard. So we've got to work hard and prioritize just instilling these things in our children. It's not going to be organic. It's not just going to come naturally. Well, remember, this is a high call from a high caller, so we can't expect it to be easy, right? If this were a bottom feeder job, if this were a role that anyone could do, then it would be easy. There wouldn't be challenges. But because motherhood is challenging, it requires wearing so many hats, it can be overwhelming at times. I'll be honest, I have felt overwhelmed at times. And for this reason, women sometimes feel very alone doing it. I found this ABC News poll they did this year, 2024, and they said that 65% of moms struggle with loneliness. And this was across the board. This was single moms, married moms, it didn't matter. 65% say they struggle with loneliness. And critics might say, well, if they're with their kids all day, they're with people all day, how can they be lonely, right? And you guys are all shaking your heads because you know what it's about, right? It's not about physically being with people. It's about being with people who are going to walk through this with you. It's about having people by your side in your same stage of life, or someone to encourage you and give you advice and tell you to press on, right? So point number 3, don't navigate motherhood alone. Don't navigate motherhood alone. Well, last week, Bethany taught you all about friendship, which was so good, and I'm sure you all found it very helpful. I thought it was wonderful. And I'm just going to piggyback off of her advice when she said that we should not do motherhood alone. This isn't a solo role that was meant to be by ourselves. It's important to have a friend group or group of friends alongside you to walk the path next to you. Because in your role as a mom, you're going to hit what I call motherhood mountains. I know it's difficult every day, but every now and then you're going to hit a phase that is just so difficult, right? It's going to be maybe your toddler will not stop throwing the temper tantrums, and you just don't know what to do, right? That's like standing at a foot of a mountain and looking up and saying, I don't know what to do. I know I need to get over this mountain, and I have no idea how to do it. Help, right? You may have a tween or teen who's just starting to rebel, right? And you just say, what do? I don't know what to do. Well, we shouldn't do it alone. We need people by our sides to help us navigate this, help us navigate over these mountains. It's kind of like hiking, okay? I'm an avid hiker, and they say you should never hike alone, and I never do. I always see people that do, and I want to scold them, but I don't. But one time I went hiking with my friend in Crystal Cove, and we had planned about an hour-and-a-half hike. We had chosen the trail that we were going to do, and we got there, and once we got into like kind of the mountains up there, we realized that the trails were not marked as well as we thought they would be, and we got ridiculously lost. I mean, like, so lost. And so we're bobbing and weaving, and but we're strategizing, like, okay, there's the ocean, so like let's at least head that way. But these trails would like go down and up and around, and then they would be heading in the wrong direction. We finally made it down to like this ravine. It was like 10 degrees colder, it was dark, like it was just like, get us out of here. But we troubleshooted together, and we worked together, and 4 hours later, we were back to our car. My friend didn't have all the answers. She didn't know the way, but having her there with me made it all the better. I mean, I truly believe had I hiked that path alone, I'd be living in that ravine right now. I'd be the lady of Crystal Cove everyone's talking about. I would have never made it out alive. And that's what we need as moms, right? We need women who will walk with us, even if they don't know all the answers. We need wise women. We need older women who have walked the path, who can look and show us, say, hey, these are the pitfalls, these are the wrong turns, don't do this, I did this, I wish I'd done this differently. Wisdom is just so valuable. Find a group of who I'm going to call your I get to gals. Find gals who see motherhood as the privilege that it truly is and are not saying I have to, but are saying I get to. Surround yourself with people who are going to be encouraging you in this role. And the beautiful thing is, you're already doing that. You're here at Navigating Motherhood. And at your table, you have other women in your stage of life with children. You have leaders who also have children. You have mentor moms who have either raised their children or on the tail end of raising their children who have wisdom to share, all at these tables. So I encourage you to show up every single week for these 2 hours. Make Friday mornings, 9:30 to 11:30, a priority in your life to be here and glean from all the things that you guys are going to talk about and learn, and just the relationships that you can build from this program. It's truly, truly invaluable. Well, another way we can navigate motherhood and not be alone, and this is going to sound a little weird, is with good books, believe it or not. See, I'm a reader. I'm going to bring in the books. But there are so many great parenting books out there. Our bookstore has a whole parenting section. And truly, when you read these books, you're not alone, right? They're giving examples of things. You're like, yeah, my kid did that. Oh, okay, all right, yeah, how do you do this, right? But you don't have to read the books alone. You could read them alongside somebody. You could read them as a group. I used to be a Navigating Motherhood table leader years ago, and every summer we did a book club with our group. It was optional if you wanted to come, and it was a parenting book, and we would just go through this book over the summer and have the best conversations. I mean, we would just learn so much from the book, but also from one another. So you don't have to read books alone, but there are some great books out there that when you do dive into them and you see the godly wisdom that is in them, you will not feel alone in motherhood. Well, 17 years ago when I was asked that question, what do you do? And I asked, I'm just a mom. I wasn't a Christian at the time. I didn't realize that my role had been given to me by the God of the universe. I truly had no clue. I didn't realize it was more than just feeding, washing, and clothing the child and just keeping them alive, so to speak. I just didn't see the big picture of motherhood and the high calling that it was. But once I became a Christian, that just totally changed. Everything changed, really. But this facet of my life changed. And now when I look back at that answer, I still cringe, but not for the same reason that I did when I gave it the first time, not out of embarrassment or feeling less than. I cringe because it just wasn't true. I was not speaking truth. I missed the opportunity to tell those other women that motherhood is a high calling from a perfect God. And it's one of the important jobs that we will ever have. So ladies, let's embrace this role and give it the priority it deserves. Thank you.